All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Before we begin, we want to recognize that the lands that we're on today are the ancestral home of the Osage. Thank you all for coming. I'm Sarah Exil. My pronouns are she and they. I'm representing Public Lands and Dick's Sporting Goods this morning. To quote professional climber Manoa Anu'u, when you love Mother Nature, you want to share it with other people. We gather today to have a conversation around the experiences of people of color in the outdoors and how all of us outdoor enthusiasts and leaders can create a safer outside. And today I really want to start to set the stage with a few quotes. A third of America's lands are public. Until 1964, many national parks did not admit people of color, and a few were segregated, but the experiences really vastly differed. And as of 2018, only 2% of national park visitors were Black. To help us continue the conversation today, we're joined by Shequaya Bailey, Jahmicah Dawes, Marcus Shoffner. Welcome, y'all. All right. Hello. And we're going to start off this panel with just, I hope you can share a little bit about who you are and what outdoorsy means to you. And we'll start with Jahmicah.
Ooh, I had to sit on this seat. Okay. So I'm Jahmicah Dawes. My pronouns are he, him. I'm from Stephenville, Texas. And let's see, outdoorsy. To me, I guess to me and my family that's here, I think it means unkept gates. We hear a lot in the industry, and I think with the outdoors, a lot of like so-and-so who's the gatekeeper or so-and-so, and like really I think if it's going to be outdoorsy and it's going to be something that is going to be open to all, we don't need anyone to be the gatekeeper. And I think for the longest time, I think it's why you heard some of those statistics is because there were gatekeepers, and those gatekeepers didn't look like us, and those gatekeepers specifically said we were not allowed. And so that's what outdoorsy means to me. And I guess who I am. So I am the owner and founder of Slim Pickins Outfitters in Stephenville, Texas. We're an independent outdoor retailer, and we are the first Black-owned outdoor retailer in the nation. So.
Thank you.
We ain't passing that up.
Shequaya, we'll go to you next.
Yes. So I am a Pittsburgh native. Shequaya Bailey. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm a Pittsburgh native. I grew up here. I went to Peabody, which is no more. I went to Penn State. We are. And yeah, and I work for Grounded Strategies. I'm also the president of a local chapter of the Pittsburgh Major Taylor Cycling Club. Also a member of the Black Foxes. And I'm also on the La Prima Espresso race team. So a little bit of a busybody, and I also help out with Pittsburgh Youth Leadership as a mentor, and also help out with Major Force as a mentor for the youth cycling program. And I have time for all that because I don't have kids. So, so that's what I do. It's what keeps me busy, keeps me going, keep me driving, or riding, and. What outdoors means to me means freedom, peace of mind. It means relaxation, joy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did I miss anything?
No, you got it all. Marcus, same question.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Marcus. I appreciate you, my brother. Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Venture Outdoors, the founder of the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition. I'm happy to share this space with each of you. Outdoorsy for me means just being able to have a space to be yourself. I think we all search for an opportunity to just be whole, and the outdoors has provided that to me and my family. So I'm always on a journey to create that and make sure that's established, especially here in Pittsburgh. I'm not from Pittsburgh, but I call it my home for now. originally from Asheville, North Carolina, so my affinity to outdoor recreation is very strong, and I want to share that with everyone. So that's what it means to me.
What a great transition to my next question, Marcus. So how did you find the line of work that you are in? You know, did you always see yourself where you are now? And Marcus, because we just edited with you, if you wouldn't mind starting there too.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, definitely didn't see myself in this space. So I was always one that wanted to create something, but not knowing what that is. I kind of started with the expectation of being some kind of entrepreneur. So I guess you could say I've done that. Just in a different form. Growing up, I always spent time outside with my grandparents fishing, and my family had a real affinity of, I would say, informal recreation. You know, something that isn't, I would say, quantified in spaces of like, oh, well, we've did this many trips outside hiking or backpacking. It was just a collaborative space for us to come together and be one with nature in the space that we held. So I went to college at Western Carolina University, which is notorious to have a base camp and a space where you can rent gear out and go out and actually recreate in a fashion that you see best fit. And that was where I learned a lot of formal recreation skills. So I learned a lot about front country recreation, but also going backcountry and having a space and representing myself in a space that historically hasn't been representative of my kind. So being one of none or one of few in spaces is kind of what's propelled my work. Being able to, you know, be my whole authentic self, represent myself in, you know, a manner that my culture accepts and represents, and sharing that with people that historically haven't had the opportunity to see that. So I wouldn't say that, you know, being the role that I'm in, being a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion for an outdoor recreation company, or founding a coalition that cares a lot about our representation is something that I saw myself doing 20 plus years ago, but I'm very happy to hold this space and hold the power that collectively we have, especially within the coalition. So not something that I saw 20 years ago for sure, but happy to be here.
Can you describe the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition just a little bit for everyone?
Yeah. So the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition, probably the basis of understanding it is, I moved here 4 years ago from a space that cared a lot about seeing identities outdoors recreating. And when I moved here, I was like, wow, I don't see black people recreating. I don't see black people in the industry professionally. I don't see pathways for employment. So I started meeting people in this sector, nonprofit, for-profit, governmental agencies, and asking the same questions I just posed, like, why are people not in this space? No one could really give me a definitive answer. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go find it and establish a way for us to make this better. So with that being said, 3 years ago, the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition started as just a collective of individuals that care a lot about this. And now we're up to about 90 plus organizations across governmental, for-profit, and nonprofit that come together to hopefully establish a way for individuals to see themselves. So Shequaya is in that space. Jahmicah, I'm sure you'd be excited to be in that space too, but we've really come around 3 main initiatives, making sure there's pathways for employment in non-traditional lines. So everyone thinks that you have to go to traditional college to be a conservationist or a recreationist that, you know, guides people outside. That's not the case. It's unrealistic for us to follow that model. So we've established ways to kind of navigate through that. We've made some policy advisements at the state and regional level to make sure there's avenues for people to see what the natural amenities of Pittsburgh is. So we could speak on that for hours for sure, but there's an initiative to make sure that we can camp in city spaces here in the city of Pittsburgh that we're developing. And then last but not least, changing how organizations represent black and brown people. So we all want to have this grandiose scheme of making sure that people, you know, especially black people, are in these spaces, but what does that mean? You know, are we welcomed in that spaces? Are we included in those spaces? Are the policies and recommendations that you have within your organization actually representative of us for inclusion? So we do that, all of it. And we're happy to share that space with anyone who's interested in participating.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to Shequaya. Same question. How did you find the line of work that you're in? Did you always see yourself where you are now?
So I I found myself in the space that I'm in. It just kind of happened organically. I definitely went to school for health policy administration, so more so on the admin side of like working in a hospital or facility like that. So definitely no, I did not find myself in this space. It just kind of happened after I like boomeranged back to Pittsburgh. I did live in Atlanta for a little bit, and that's kind of where, by living there and just commuting, because I didn't have a car, so I was doing it by bike, and it just, when you commute by bike, you just take in spaces differently, you interact with spaces differently, and that's kind of how I got my intro into just doing that. And then when I came back to Pittsburgh, I kept riding, kept biking just to the means to get around, and then I ended up meeting up with the president of Major Taylor at the time, Bruce Woods, and he really opened my eyes to a lot of different things, a lot of different aspects of the city, and just enjoying the spaces and learning about like the different trails we had and things like that. Even though I'm from here, I didn't really engage with those spaces really beyond that, and that's kind of how I like got into the cycling aspect, to really appreciate and outside and outdoors. But I think my first intro to like maybe outdoor like camping and things like that was high school. They had like a program with SCA, Student Conservation Association, and so we did camping in all weather, snow, rain, all summer, everything, and we worked on like trail systems and things like that, and we learned about like camp skills, how to build a fire, and how to build a shelter system if you don't have a tent, and so like just different forms of that. And I think that little bit of intro there, and then through the cycling, and now like just doing more of those things kind of led me to enjoy and interact with spaces differently and appreciate those spaces differently. But also being that I grew up in the city, I think without those sort of systems and infrastructure, I probably wouldn't have had those opportunities to do that, just because, you know, my mom's single parent, working all the time, so it is hard to make space and time to like do some of those kind of outdoor activities and to really appreciate like the amenities we have here within the city when you have someone who's working all the time. So that's definitely how I've like engaged with the space and kind of how I've entered into it, and then kind of linked up with Grounded almost by happenstance. I wanted to change and to pivot in the organization I was working for, and the work that they were doing was directly in the community that I grew up in. I grew up in Larimer or Larmer, depending on where you're from. But yeah, I grew up in Larmer, and so that neighborhood, they were doing a lot of work in that neighborhood, and wanting to change how people interacted with the land and how it was treated. They ended up being an integral and a part of like creating of a garden and a green space, which is actually no more. Development has come to that neighborhood, and so it's being put to productive use, which is good. And so there's going to be housing and all sorts of things in that space now. But that was like my first interface and what attracted me to Grounded Strategies and the work that they were doing. But yeah, and then what's the second question?
No, I think you answered that one.
Okay.
Did you see yourself where you are now? And you said no.
See?
You got it.
Yeah.
All right, Jahmicah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When I'm on panels, I'm still an audience member, and so Marcus, the things that you're doing now, like with the policies and on both like kind of the local level, state and regional, are those like some of the things that Shequaya was just saying that she benefited from with like the Shequaya, was it SCA?
Yeah, Student Conservation Association.
That's awesome. I never heard of that. Is it kind of like having things like, I guess, establishing opportunities or even classes, programs like that?
Combination of both.
Okay.
So I can say from my perspective, and I think the people that know me, I enter spaces and see what's wrong with it and want to change it. With that being said, I think there's no offense to anyone, but I think that there are some things at the city and state level that need to be changed to make sure that we're representative in these spaces. So I pushed very hard for that. But in addition, like Shequaya has said, like there are avenues and programs that just aren't potentially reaching everyone. And I try to establish those with collaborations and partnerships with a lot of individuals that are in this space today. So I'd say I kind of border on both.
Okay.
some respectful conflict nonetheless.
Okay.
Shaking things up.
Cool.
I like it.
Thanks for letting me ask that.
Of course.
So
Feel free.
Yeah, what was the question?
Yeah. Okay, so how did you find the line of work that you're in? Did you always see yourself here?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So how did I find the line of work that I am with me? The line of work that I am right now, like honestly, I wouldn't have done it and couldn't have done it without the support of my wife. Hey, babe. And you know, I really, that's one of the things. And even if we had started it, we still wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for the involvement, not just the support, but the buy-in, the talent of not just my wife, but of the women. So something that we say is like, we're black owned, but we're women ran. And so, but how I got into that was, so when I was in school, I love horses. I still love horses. So I went to school at Tarleton State in Stephenville, Texas. I wanted to be a horse trainer. But I never owned a horse, so that was I think a minor kind of mishap maybe. And so, but my grandmas, they were all involved in clothing in one sense or another. One of my grandmas was a home ec teacher, and she was a professional dressmaker. My grandma on my dad's side, she had 7 kids, so she was a clothing maker just by choice because she had 7 kids. She was from Jamaica, and so she just had this amazing kind of creativity about her. And I bring that in because I'd always promised my grandmas I'd learn how to sew. They always really kind of advocated that every person needs to learn how to sew. It's not just a role that women have or need to have. Every person needs, because you never know when you're going to be in a situation where you would need it. And so I was starting to have second thoughts because I didn't own a horse about being a horse trainer. And I saw in the course catalog there was an intro to clothing construction. And so I took that class, and that's kind of where I kind of had this love-hate relationship with clothing construction. And so even though I started in college with an equine science, which in that space there was not a lot of people like me, I think there might have been one other person. So I was used to that sort of thing, just kind of standing out. And then when I went into clothing construction and I ended up with a major in fashion merchandising, I was also the only person like me, but it was really more so because I was the only male. So standing out in a different way. And so with us owning the shop, I always thought I was going to own a shop. I thought it was sneakers. I'm really into sneakers. And so Marcus, I see the Undefeateds right there. Those are nice. And in fact, that's the first thing, not to be weird, but I guess just to get it out, we're transparent to a fault. If I meet you, that's the very first thing I've noticed about you. Probably even before I met you is what you're wearing on your feet. And so, no, it's okay. And so I always thought it was that, like that was just something I was interested in and passionate in. And so when I got into especially retail, which is at a sneaker shop, and loved that and just kind of loved the culture about it, I was like, well, this is what I'm gonna do. I never thought I was gonna own an outdoor shop. That was I can honestly say that was not part of the plan. But it was still specialty retail, and I could still sell sneakers in that. And so when the opportunity came for us to open this, I was like, sure, let's try it. I did not expect or know. In fact, one of my friends asked me if you knew that you were going to be the first black person to do this, would you have done it? And I say absolutely not, just because not because I'm nervous or anything like that, but just like I would have never thought that still in 2016 that I would be so that's kind of how I got into this space. Did I ever see myself in this? No, but I will say that but that's all it takes, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, a lot of black people and people of color, it just takes one person to be represented for you to just, I mean, could you say that? Like, just, it's something in your head like, oh, if I can see it, I can be it. I don't need a whole group. I just need one. And so, yeah, even though I didn't see myself in it, and that was because there wasn't, I'm starting to see myself now and other people, because even though we're the first, I'm glad to rejoicefully say that we're no longer the only. And so there are now, babe, is it 2, 3 other black-owned outdoor retailers in the nation. So I'll take those odds, and we'll keep running with it.
I love it. I think to your point of if I can see it, I can be it. So funny. I just joined Dick's Sporting Goods in November, and at a certain time, I had a conversation with Steve and Marcus. We were just chatting. We were talking about the outdoors, and I'm like sitting there like, why haven't I explored this enough? But I saw it. And I think that I literally in February went on this huge road trip all over California, and just like, oh, there's a park. Yeah. We gotta go. I went to Joshua Tree. It was like really exciting for me, and it was like, it wasn't permission per se. Like I didn't need permission, but I just needed to know that someone else had done it and that I would be safe. Yeah. Keyword safe. Doing it. And I think that brings me to my next question, which is, what does your outdoors experience feel like or look like in certain spaces? And I think just, again, thinking of us as being a Black person in certain spaces, what can your experience sometimes be like? Or are there times where you don't feel safe? And I would love to talk about that. Maybe we start here with Shequaya.
Sure. I think I'm the anomaly, and then I just do stuff even though it's probably not safe. And so, I do a lot of things that is probably not safe. People are like, you did that by yourself? So not a lot of smart things, but I think I just kind of go for things. But when I do think about it, when I'm talking to someone, they're like, oh, why don't you go check out riding in West Virginia and going out, because literally as soon as you leave Pittsburgh proper, you start seeing a lot of flags flying. Even when I was talking to someone and going out to Irwin, there's this house that has a Confederate flag that consistently flies as I'm riding down this road, and I always know that house when I'm passing it, and I know they have like 3 dogs and they always bark. But just knowing that those things exist, I'm always like, it's always in the back of my mind, and I'm always a little worried. And that's probably why I haven't like done some things solo in certain spaces, because I'm like, well, I don't know. Because every time I go here, I just see a lot more of these flags, and it's just like a sign, like, thanks for this flag, because you're letting me know that I'm not safe here. But also, when I see this flag, I know that I'm not safe there, and I should probably avoid it, especially when I go to places. Even though West Virginia is beautiful, but I see lots of flags, and it makes me a little nervous, and I'm like, yeah, you know, it's great mountain biking and lots of technical features to try and great gravel, but there's a lot of flags, so I don't know if I should even be going there.
And sundown towns.
Yeah, sundown towns is another whole other thing, and I do try a lot of I try to think about where I stop, and I just recently did a road trip from Pittsburgh. It was Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Pensacola, New Orleans, Nashville, Cincinnati, and then back to Pittsburgh. And I brought my bike. I did drive, brought my bike, but like I was intentional about where I stopped, making sure it was well lit, no like small rinky-dink looking weird gas station, you know, just being like really thoughtful. And I think as a woman, and also not very large, just kind of like understanding my stature, that those are things you have to consider. Your safety, where's it gonna be safe to go? Those are definitely considerations. And some of the scariest things, and I do ride alone a lot, which surprises myself if you wanna think about it. You know, having a bunch of kids riding by in the pickup can be the scariest things, because whenever these like white teenagers or young 20-somethings are together, it can be a very unsafe place for someone who's Black, because something about that group think gets worse. And I've had a situation where it happened, you know, where that thing, which is why I'm specifically speaking about that, but a very triggering situation on like Rankin Bridge, which is not even that far outside of Pittsburgh, and having a situation occur, but like not letting that stop me. And I think just knowing that those things happen, I do get called names often. And so just like letting it roll off and just like, you know what, this happens, but I'm gonna keep being here because, you know, by way of like, you know, role models like Robin and Bruce, other like Black cyclists who continue being in this space, you know, regardless of the things that they may experience, and just knowing that, you know, people see you and then encourages them to do it and try it. I think that's what gives me motivation to stay in the space even when I experience certain things. And it's more so been in the car and passing, never like super direct. Well, I mean, there was one situation on Rochester Road, but I did press charges, but I don't think he got in trouble. But, you know, it just, so just things occur and I just kind of like let it roll off and just keep pushing and be positive and try to like always glass half full kind of idea around it. And I try not to harp on it. I don't even think about it until you like ask these questions and I'm like, oh, all this did happen. But I just try to like stay positive and keep trying stuff. And like I even did my first solo bike packing trip last year. I did it on the Gap, which is a great first, you know, bike packing trip to do it on, because the Gap is Greater Allegheny Passage and the Cumberland and C&O trail. I did it all the way to DC, and so it's a good first trail to do that on because it's like well marked and there's just lots of places to stop, and I did feel pretty safe. I did camp 2 of the 3 nights, and so that was really cool to do. And I think because it was so well established, I felt comfortable, and I saw a Black woman doing it, and that's why I got the idea. I saw she had a YouTube channel. I think she came to Pittsburgh and she did it. I forgot her name, but I know she's a little bit older. She has a couple kids, and I was like, oh, she was doing this OG style. She had like all this gear, and I was like, I'm not carrying all that, but that's what inspired me, because like just seeing her do it, I was like, oh, she's a real G. I'm about to do this too. So. And I did, and like just checking that off my list, and you know I have another trip planned. Probably gonna do like the upper north part of Pennsylvania later this year to bike across and kind of cut through Allegheny National Forest, which I've never been, so that would be pretty dope. But yes, I just kind of going out there and giving it a go.
But I think what's key here too is that your passion for this experience or the cycling, right, it's not going to be deterred by people who can sometimes make you feel unsafe, right? Or who make you feel unsafe. And I think that's powerful. So going to you, Marcus, same question, you know, what does your outdoors experience look like, feel like, any, as a Black person? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think I share some of the sentiments as Shequaya. You know, I'm the type of person where I'm gonna continue to show up, whether you want me there or not. I'm a visionary, I'm not a martyr. You know, I see the future and what like I want it to be, but I'm not gonna sit here and let like aggression or like physical violence, you know, surpass my experience. I mean, my outdoor recreation day to day is, you know, I bike to work, I spend time outside with my dogs. I collaborate in spaces. I think that's kind of what leads back to my historical experience outside is, you know, I grew up in a space where like tradition just wasn't really a thing. Like my idea of tradition was just like barbecuing outside with my family, or, you know, fishing, or doing other things that, you know, not a lot of people that look like me were doing because we just didn't have that welcoming space. But I would say like I had some kind of form of privilege by having a grandparents that were white that would like make sure that I was secure in these spaces. And historically, like we know that, you know, being Black in these spaces was not a thing. And I'm from the South, that was not a thing, you know? So I at this point in my life, I just want to make sure that there's spaces, and one, like from a foundational sense, everyone's welcome in these spaces, but also you have the opportunity to be yourself. You know, similar, I mean, me and Jahmicah, we have a lot of shared experience. I care a lot about how I dress, no offense, but like I want to be urban, and I want you to know that I'm urban when I'm backcountry, and I want you to feel like, you know, Nikes on a trail is like foreign, because I want it to be the next wave per se for, you know, urbanites that look like me, that care about a lot about fashion, music, like representation outdoor in these spaces. So I just want to make sure that that's secure, you know, kind of end of the day. Be who you are outside. Wear Supreme, wear Nikes, wear whatever you want to wear, and go, you know, hike a trail or go to the Allegheny National Forest, or, you know, go to the Tetons, and like be you, because that's what's important in these spaces. So
Thank you, Marcus. I feel like I'm coming to you next.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm going to also add on a question. I feel like, you know, this could be a two-parter in a sense, you know, so what does your experience look like, right? But then also maybe ending with, in what ways are you creating a safer outdoors for all because of perhaps the way that you're answering the first question?
I was always outside. I think like when I was a kid, because I loved animals. Well, I mean, you could bring animals inside, like farm animals, but you necessarily shouldn't. But so I was always my grandpa, who's from Jamaica. He had animals in Jamaica. When they came here to America, they still had animals, and so I was always outside with those sort of things. And then even kind of coming up when I was in high school, this is kind of an ongoing thing that my wife and I, we both show the hogs in FFA, and so we kind of have this ongoing thing of kind of like who showed hogs the best because of like who had the most belt buckles, and so like, but like even remembering those sort of things, like just being outside, like I really enjoyed it. And I think in these untraditional ways, again, just because you didn't see a lot of people that looked like me doing those things, but and then kind of coming into the Scouts, I didn't have a good experience. I had actually a very negative experience. And so that's kind of like where and I associated my experience with the Scouts with like, well, if this is what the outdoors is, I don't want to be a part of it. And so my reconnection back to the outdoors, I'm a fly angler. I love fly fishing. In fact, I have to say, this area, Heather and I were driving, like, y'all have some dope fishy spots, streams and all of that. And I was thinking I should have brought my fly rod, and I brought 2 pairs of shoes instead, two extra pairs of shoes, 2 more pairs of shoes, and I should have brought my fly rod. So, but like something about, to me with fly fishing is, and one of the things for me is why I love it is like, I can be in the water, or actually, Heather is a big proponent of it. Like when I'm stressed, when I've had a rough kind of season, rough couple of days or weeks, she will encourage me to just like, babe, when's the last time you went fly fishing? And it's not having kids, running a business, all of those things. The time is I wish I had more time to do it, but having a partner who advocates for that, of like, hey, this is something that like makes you better mentally. This is something that makes you kind of healthier. I really have to say I love that about her, that she supports me in that. And so that's my go-to is being in the water. And now I make sure that I have several different kinds of rods, not for just the different kind of fishing I want to fish, but like because the goal is to invite somebody. And the goal is to have all of the gear I need to prevent that person I invite from like not feeling welcome, not feeling that they have all the gear they need to enjoy this space like I'm enjoying it. Because that's how I got into it. I had friends that knew me enough and loved me enough, and they knew me intimately enough that they knew the hurdles, they knew the barriers to entry that were there, so that when they said, hey, Jahmicah, you want to go fly fish? I've got your rod, I've got the line, I've got everything you need right here. How could I not say no? I was with friends that I felt safe with. I I was with white friends that they made space in their space for me. It wasn't like, hey, you should go and do this. Again, it wasn't like by myself, like out there. Like it was, hey, come along with us while we go enjoy this. And so like that's what I try to recreate now is like, so I have these multiple things, and also maybe I'm saying it kind of loudly so my wife can hear. So when I get more multiple things, she knows like, babe, it's not for me, it's for other people. Like it's,
Her face is really impressed right now.
Yeah. I remember when I told her, I was like, hey, what do you think about getting a fly rod holder on the car? She's like, whose car? I was like, okay, I guess that's the answer. Okay. But it really was like I want to have these things so that when I invite someone, and even now, so when I bring my son along, he has all the things that he needs to be put on a fish. So my friends have all the things they need to be put on a fish. So that the random people I meet on the street, this dude that the other day I was looking at a building and he was there with his uncle, and I was like, hey, do you like to fish? And he's like, well, yeah, I fished before. I was like, you ever fly fished? He's like, no. I was like, you want to? And it was really, and I knew the next question because I used to be in that same position. I don't have, like, don't worry. I was like, I've got your rod, I've got your line, I've got flies, I got extra waders, I got everything you would need. So whenever you want to, know that there is no barrier to entry. As long as you're like, and you're around here, I've got you. And I think, what am I doing now for other people to feel safe in that space? I think continue to occupy that space, number one. Continue to kind of come to things like this and talk about those things. And never being afraid to just tell people, hey, I got you. I think whatever space we're occupying in the outdoors and what we're passionate about, you don't have to have the best gear, you don't have to even have the newest gear, but I would encourage people to have enough that like, the goal is not for you to just enjoy the outdoors, the goal is for you to enjoy the outdoors with other people, with a community. And if that community is only the people that are experienced in those things, then we're missing out. Not only are we missing out, but they're missing out. And ultimately, like the outdoors is missing out. I think that the only way that this is going to continue to happen, to continue to be conserved and preserved, is if more new people come in that haven't been here before. And that's only going to happen if we know what those barriers to entries are, and if we as the, not gatekeepers, but ambassadors, these kind of proclaimed ambassadors of it, because we love it, because it's healthy, because it's renewing, because we love to be out here, also continue to make space. And a part of that making space is also being able to provide the things they need to enjoy it.
Outdoor ambassador. I'm ready. I'm gonna do this. I think that was like such a tangible way to include people in the journey. So thank you for that. Thank you. Shequaya, in what ways are you creating a safer outdoors for all? Yeah.
I think the piggyback definitely to create space for other people, being present as a part of like Major Taylor, having the club as a vehicle to show other folks that there are other black and brown people cycling, like me doing the slow roll, and make sure I place it near the Healthy Ride, or now Pogo bikes, so that people who don't have bikes will have access. And for folks who do want to become members, if they don't have a bike, we actually do have bikes for people who are members that they can use. So just, we don't advertise it very broadly, but if there's ever a person that says like, oh, I don't have a bike, or then we're just, oh, we got you, So I think that is, like, having that space and creating that space is important. And of course, through the youth program, making sure that they know we're here, even if the kids are just there, for high school, late middle, and all they get from the program is just maybe that 8-week experience in the bike, that's fine. Maybe they'll come back to us later when they grow up a bit more and they have more free time. Be like, oh, I remember I used to ride a bike. There's some people out there that used to be riding. That's cool to do. I think that is helpful, because I think before I met Major Taylor, I thought I was like really the only person that wanted to like ride for just fun and recreation. I should say black woman, I just wanted to do that because I didn't really see that. So I think seeing them was like super helpful, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole slew of them, because my friends used to clown me and be like, oh, why are you riding this bike? Like, why aren't you driving? Because of course, having a car is a sign of status and elevation, and I was like, At the time, I was like, I don't want a car. That's 2 bills.
Yeah.
Because you got the note and you got insurance, and then that's 3 because we're upkeep. So I was like, I don't want it. But then I did get a car so I can do more biking. So but yeah, just create a space, and I got a bike rack so I can bring a friend to go on rides and see stuff. So I try to create space in that way, being present and
I love this.
give access. Yeah.
Bring people along. That's a theme here. Marcus, same question.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try to keep it succinct. I definitely echo everyone's sentiments thus far. From a coalition standpoint, I think there's a lot of things that we're trying to do to make sure, again, people have pathways for outdoor recreation, but also being very conscious of the fact that there are exclusionary incidents outside and being able to show the prevalence of that. So to speak more directly to that, in Pittsburgh, there have been incidents the past year where individuals have lost their lives recreating or attempting to recreate. And that doesn't fall on deaf ears, especially on my end. Being an African American that likes to bike, or an African American that likes to go backcountry and hike. I can't sit by, and I don't think anyone in the coalition or anyone even here on this panel is going to sit by and let that go unnoticed. So what we've done is establish an outdoor inclusion coalition exclusionary incident report, which will track incidents that are identity based, whether it be racial status or ability or whatever you identify as. We want to track the fact that you're being targeted or you're experiencing these spaces. And why we do that is because everyone likes to say, if there's no data, it didn't happen. Or if you can't tell me the exact incident, it didn't happen. From my perspective, that's not enough. If we're going to actually advocate on behalf of everyone being outside, we need to make sure that these spaces are representative of everyone. And when you go home, you can come back home. So there's going to be a tool in Pittsburgh very soon where you can be able to report any kind of incidents that you have in these spaces. They'll be de-identified, and what we're doing is just gathering prevalence. So, when we go to a city or when we go to the state, we know that this many incidents are occurring, they're racialized, and we're going to ask for change. And that could be either policy change, that could be built environment change, that could be public education. But from then on, the ball is in whoever's court to change. And I think the responsibility for all of us that are going out recreating is, again, we care about sharing that experience with others. We all do. But it's my responsibility as someone who puts on trips to make sure that you get home responsibly. Yeah. And if I know in Pittsburgh that there's graffiti of swastikas or nooses in public spaces, I'm not taking you to those spaces, especially imagining that that's your first experience. So having an understanding of the prevalence is just going to guide everything that we're going to do, and making sure, again, that these spaces are safe for everyone. Not to mention all the mentorship and all the cool things to get your first opportunity to touch a tent or to, hang out in a sleeping bag. But, all that is for nothing if we can't make sure people get home safely. So we're very conscious of that, and we're pursuing that very intentionally. So
I think even just hearing you kind of speak to this is making me think of I'd probably be more likely to go into certain spaces based off of what the report would say.
For sure.
But just like if my family was visiting and I wanted to go somewhere, right? I think that's research that, I use Google reviews now, right? Yeah. But I think that this would speak to my experience a little bit more. And so thank you for that work, and thank you for what you're doing there. And I think we're kind of touching on this, and my last question here is, what are organizational or individual actions that we can all take as outdoor enthusiasts to create safer spaces, and just to be pushing for a better tomorrow? Not to sound cheesy with the better tomorrow, but yeah. Who wants to take it first?
I can
Marcus,
start.
yeah.
I think it's important for really, from an organizational standpoint, I think it's important for everyone to recognize that they've caused some form of trauma, especially for everyone here in Pittsburgh. Like, there's no disrespect to anyone, but if you want me to be in those spaces, I need to know that, one, you understand what you've caused, but also you're working towards something. So by saying all of that, the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition welcomes anyone who wants to do the work and move forward with collaboration within these spaces. You know, the Inclusionary Incident Report is extremely important for me to understand that, you know, there's going to be organizations that have bought into the fact that they're supporting people going outside from a diversity standpoint. You know, if you implement a tool like this within your organization and you receive, we hope that there's not going to be high prevalence, but you receive an incident, the ball's in your court to change for the better and to make sure that you're bringing everyone in and making sure that our opinion, our representation matters. And historically, there hasn't been an opportunity for that. You know, rest in peace to George Floyd and the other individuals that have passed, just being out in these spaces that have spearheaded the fact that we get to sit in this panel and represent our culture, our identity, but it's our turn to pick up the baton and do more. And I think that doesn't have to be just a black and a cultural representation. That can be all of us, you know. Everyone has a space outside. Let's make sure we can solidify that.
Thank you, Marcus. Shequaya?
Yeah, I think what folks can definitely do, and this is not just even on the diversity in color, like diversity in all its form and age, body type, like it just helps just to say hello. You don't gotta go extra ham and comment on somebody's body type or suggesting, oh, I can't believe you're out here. Like, don't do that. But just, I think it's just saying hello and being friendly. I definitely, you know, it's people, if they have a really nice bike, maybe don't immediately call the police and assume that they stole it. They actually really might own it. They just maybe don't look how you think they should look. Because that's happened a lot to some of my like brother friends in other cities, just because they have like nice equipment and they might be rocking their Nikes and stuff instead of riding in some Giros with Velocio gear. They're just wearing their more urban gear and they're riding this bike that's maybe $5 or $7 grand, but that's their business. Yeah. So it's like kind of not assume. Be welcoming. Don't assume things about people's person just because they don't look as fit as you think they might be. I find that happens a lot to people who are larger bodies. They get a lot of comments on like their ability to do things. So just kind of be welcoming, just say hello and keep all the other things to yourself. When in doubt, just say hello and keep it at that.
Yeah, no, great advice.
Yeah, that should be a shirt. Like, when in doubt, like, say hello and keep it moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. A friend and mentor, James Edward Mills, said one time that like there's a difference, and he was talking about because he was also, I guess if I'm mentioning him, I should talk about shout outs and righteous recognition to the Full Circle Everest that's going on right now. If you don't know what that is, I encourage you to look it up. Just literally go on Instagram and put in Full Circle Everest. But they're making history, changing history with that. But he was telling me a story in the sense of like when he was a rep at North Face, and he said, and I realize it's one thing to say that you can buy our stuff. It's another thing to say we want you to buy our stuff, to feel welcome there. And so changing it, there's one thing to just say like, oh yeah, like black people can be in the outdoors. It's another thing to feel welcomed for people to continually, for people and organizations to continue to encourage and welcome people into the outdoors. And so that's one thing. Like, how do you, as an individual or how as an organization, are you welcoming? Are you being intentional and welcoming? We were talking it earlier about going to where they're at, but not just going to where they're at and inviting them, but inviting them like through people that look like them. So if you don't have anybody that looks like them, I think that's that's like check number one, right? And so also we were on the plane coming down here, and the stewardess said, if you see something, say something. And I was like, oh, that's like, I hear that a lot. If you see something, say something. But I think also a lot, if you hear something, say something. And I think as I look out and I see white faces, you're going to hear things about us and us just people. You're going to hear things about us being women of color, black women. You're going to hear things about us just being women that like, in these kind of smaller circles that, whether they're boys clubs or whatever, and in jokes, or it's made in jest. And if you're hearing that and you're not saying something, you're not stopping it, or if you're really not kind of meeting it and saying like, no, or you need to check yourself, or that's not okay, that's not funny, then I was going to say we're taking a step back, but I think then you're taking a step back. I think really, and I don't mean to like point the finger, but like you yourself are taking a step back. And I remember that only from personal experience when I've heard something and didn't say something, how I felt that night, the next week, the next month, I still think about it, and like I've taken a step back from that experience. And so don't allow other people, even if you're in that company, if they say something like that, to affect you in a way that, like, by you not saying something is going to make you take a step back as an individual or also as an organization. Because if it happens once, it's going to continue to happen, and then I think then you kind of go into, you're going to have those incidents report that Marcus is talking about with your individual name or your organization's name all over it. So
yeah, so say something. When we don't say something, we take a step back. Yeah. I think in this space that we're in as well, say hello. Yeah. To keep all assumptions to self, those biases that are flooding, right? And then I think that you're speaking about stepping forward and advocating and recognizing when there are voices that aren't there, when we have the opportunity to do more than say something, but really advocate so that those things don't happen again. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your perspective, your stories, your lived experiences. I think we all took a lot of tangible things that we can all do today. And yeah, so
thanks to Public Lands. This is a really cool space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Woo. I'm like gonna stand up.
This is awesome.